Erie is vastly changing.
A lot of promise was in our community before the pandemic.
I believe COVID-19 is a serious threat.
We were all unprepared for it.
I think it's going to probably be, until 2022 or so until you see our sector actually start to bounce back.
I mean, no one in living memory recalls a time like this.
Many of us feel like disconnected with what's happening in America.
COVID is exactly where we don't want it to be.
And it's not uncommon that when budgets get tight, arts and humanities are the first to be axed.
Tough decisions had to be made.
Not only were we unprepared for it, but it kept changing day by day.
So we're following the same policies as Pittsburgh and as Philadelphia. Is that the best way to do that? I don't know.
I mean, how restrictive should we be for everyone to feel safe?
How do we move forward now? Is it a one-glove-fits-all type of policy, or do we need to look at policies based on the population and the communities?
I mean, I think all of us want this to be over tomorrow, and I think all of us are just tired of thinking and talking about COVID continuously.
But certainly people in Erie are upset at some of the tough decisions that had to be made to bring this thing under control.
I've been a librarian for decades.
I've been at Gannon for going into my 26th year.
We've been around since 1960. We were actually the first arts council in the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
I'm the New American Liaison at the City of Erie.
We are a local, nonpartisan think tank here to serve as a platform for discussions of ideas.
For conversations that we have to have as a community that otherwise would be difficult to attain.
So that everyone, regardless of their status or their rank or their resources, could come to a place like this and learn and socialize and really improve their lives.
Yeah, so Erie actually has a very robust creative and cultural community.
20% of our population here in Erie is immigrants.
They're contributing to the community by opening business, by employing people, buying houses.
Erie has become a little more global in their experience.
Some people are afraid of what's going to happen with a lot of restriction on immigration, reducing number of refugee resettlement.
Without the immigrant population, where would Erie be?
Being locked in changes everything.
The COVID gave us the opportunity as a nation to look at ourselves in a mirror and figure out what is really going on.
The arts and cultural sector is really dependent upon social interaction.
Before we were thinking, how do we get as many people into the library as possible with community spaces and collaboratories? Now we're thinking, well, maybe we're not quite ready for that.
We have to adjust, that's the shift.
The smaller organizations have maybe been a little quicker to adapt than the larger organizations, but I think across the nation, the organizations that were the quickest to respond were the ones that maybe 5 or 10 years ago started examining equitable delivery models. How do you get out to individuals that might not be the ones that are directly coming for live experiences, and how can you use technology to innovate what you're doing?
We cannot make any large event, and people starting to think about doing event online.
We discovered that a lot of the programming actually can happen online.
We're reaching a bigger audience than we were in person.
More and more people are using us as a purely digital access point.
We're so much more connected, and I want to continue the virtual meetings even after COVID-19 is just ancient history.
Now, the question is it as effective? And I don't believe it is, because there is something about the power of applause, the power of people being together and hearing an idea together.
So for a new American, it's hard to do the English as a second language classes online. And some of the participants on that English as a second language classes are probably elderly. Technology can be a challenge for them.
Likewise, in the classroom, the energy that's transmitted from one student to another is diminished with social distancing.
Mental health, it becomes also a problem because, you have to talk about it and acknowledge it.
People talking to each other is something about that engages community change.
So I think that it's not often thought about what our sector fully contributes to the whole. We contribute to quality of life. What are your arts? What are your entertainment? What is your recreation? All of that plays a role in decision making. And I think if a community like ours was to lose that, or any community like Erie were to lose that, you would actually see future growth stunted substantially.
We need to invest in our schools. We need to invest in our infrastructure.
We've not done a good job in retaining some of our best and brightest. Those who come in, they don't typically stay long because either this is a transitional point or they just can't find a place to plug in.
So we have to invest in arts. We have to invest in things that these folks get in the big cities that they're gonna want here in our community. So
there's been progress in some areas. There's been stagnation in some areas, and there's actually been some regression in other areas.
In some regard, Erie has some catching up to do, but we have the resources here to do it.
Continue investing. Don't fall back right now, because this is where the best fight happens, is in situations like these.
So I'd love to see maybe some better collaboration between the arts and humanities and our innovation sector to see how we can not just return to normal, but think about what does it mean to be planning ahead.
Because we are doing a phenomenal job on the Bayfront. Incredible work in building that up. In our downtown, investing a ton of money and building it up. But I look and say, I don't necessarily see a lot of opportunities there for people of color.
Invest in your human capital.
Those communities that are clearly way behind and they need the most help should be first in line for whatever resources, financial or otherwise.
If we don't, then we'll continue heading the same path as we have.
When we're thinking about the companies that are building and investing now in the 21st century, a lot of it is knowledge-based. A lot of those companies are realizing that you don't necessarily need to be in New York City or Los Angeles or Seattle in order to be successful. Likewise, they're realizing that they can't be in those areas, either because the expense of it has forced them out, or they're seeing just how population density during something like this public health crisis has made them rethink where they select to locate.
And make sure that things like the Philharmonic survives, and make sure that things like our local breweries survive, make sure that we have bike paths.
If we've been out of habit of going to live events and experiences for more than a year, possibly 2 years, how are we going to convince people again to come back?
We now realize that we need to change, not only because of COVID, but because of social issues.
Again, we'll adapt. We'll get through this.
We're getting more comfortable now. We know what to do to stay safe.
But like any other crisis, it really forces you to stop and reassess and look for opportunities that you either didn't have the time or you didn't have the impetus to do.
Yes, there's gonna be things that we need to learn. Let's just be safe. We get through this corona together.
Community itself shows actually strength and commitment to deal with this.